I want to play a clip by Max Blumenthal. Max Blumenthal was on Alex Jones. And some of this is understood to be probably true. I mean, Israel has bugged Secret Service vehicles before. That's not all that shocking. It's the other part that he says that is super interesting. This is Max Blumenthal talking about people who are in the Trump administration saying that Donald Trump apparently is fearful for his life. I have a comment on this after this, but he's saying that people who are close to the president has been telling them this.
Why don't you give us every detail you were told?
Well, this is according to a source with very good access inside the White House. I could say even the Oval Office, that on 2 separate occasions this year, Israel was caught placing surveillance or electronic devices on Secret Service emergency response vehicles. I'm only as good as my sources, because if I call up the Secret Service, I'm going to get some like desk guy who's going to tell me, no comment, we don't talk about that. But there's a precedent there. As I said, Israel did the same exact thing in 2019, and it was reported widely across mainstream media. The NSA has fingered Israel as the top surveillance threat to the United States. They surveil the U.S. more
Absolutely,
than any
but Max,
other
this
country.
is so huge. Your sources are saying in Secret Service vehicles.
And by the way,
I mean, this is basically an act of war, and you were giving other examples from your sources. Please elaborate as much as give us every detail you were told.
Well, I elaborated as much as I could. I mean, what I've been told for months and months, talking to administration insiders, is that Trump is frightened of the Israeli influence, especially after his.
By the way, and I'll restart that. I've had John Kiriakou on the show, and John Kiriakou has made the point that the U.S. is not allowed to spy on Israel. That policy, going back for decades, prevents the United States from spying on the state of Israel, even though they can spy, apparently, on us, do so, and often get caught doing so. That is an amazing thing.
I call up the Secret Service.
When this was raised on the Tucker Carlson interview, when he was having a conversation with Ted Cruz, do you remember that Ted Cruz was like, well, what's the big deal with that? And Tucker Carlson like, what do you mean, what's the big deal? What do you mean, what's the big deal? Like, why do I have to argue this point to you that a foreign government, a colony of squatters that we effectively use as our cudgel in the Middle East, shouldn't be able to spy on us? And the idea that we can't spy on them is outrageous. It's outrageous. You have to ask, why? Let's keep going.
I'm going to get some like desk guy who's going to tell me, no comment, we don't talk about.
What the hell? Let's try this again. StreamYard is effing up today. Let's try this one more time. StreamYard, fix your code, dude. Fix your code. Fix your code.
2019, and it was reported widely across mainstream media. The NSA has fingered Israel as the top surveillance threat to the United States. They surveil the U.S. more
Absolutely,
than any
but Max,
other
this
country.
is so huge. Your sources are saying in Secret Service vehicles. I mean, this is basically an act of war, and you were giving other examples from your sources. Please elaborate as much as give us every detail you were told.
Well, I elaborated as much as I could. I mean, what I've been told for months and months, talking to administration insiders, is that Trump is frightened of the Israeli influence, especially after his experiencing 2 assassination attempts. That's what we're unmasking, is the biggest foreign influence infiltration operation in American history that is basically taking control of an administration that says it's America first and is taking us to a very dangerous place.
Now, he is making the argument. That for all intents and purposes, Donald Trump is terrified of the Israelis, and that he got this information out of somebody who is in the White House and who's in the administration. On top of this, he's also alleging that they bugged, I guess, Secret Service emergency vehicles. The first part, I don't doubt. That doesn't shock me in the least. Obviously, if you're Israel, if you're any government, you would want some kind of intel on the governments that you're dealing with and working with. It's the reason why the U.S. bugged German phones or bugged, have listening into the various European states and so forth. this is kind of normal hand, especially for, let's say, CIA government interplay. The other part is more interesting. This argument that Donald Trump is terrified of the Israelis. Now, it sounds like what Max is trying to argue is a part of the reason and rationale that Donald Trump has been so obsequious to the Israelis, doing and effectively bending over backwards for anything that they say and anything that they want, has more to do with some level of fear that there have been 2 assassination attempts on my life, and I'm terrified of the Israelis. I don't know who told Max that. And, I am very skeptical of anonymous sources when they're in Politico, the New York Times, or anywhere else, where somebody says, hey, Joe Biden is working tirelessly to get the Israelis to stop murdering, raping, and killing babies, women, children, etc. He's working tirelessly. That's what an anonymous source told us. Well, that wasn't true. Obviously, that wasn't true. Or when Donald Trump is very angry at Netanyahu. A source close to the White House told us he's very angry. Donald Trump is very angry that Netanyahu attacked Doha. Okay, well, this is nonsense, considering that Donald Trump knew that the strike was going to take place and ensured that air defense and everything else wasn't going to be turned on to ensure that the strike could take place. But he's very angry, according to the papers, when they're talking about it. I think like Axios put that story up. I don't care about your anonymous sources. When your anonymous sources is not lining up with reality itself. Is Max talking to somebody in the White House? Maybe. I'm not going to say he's out there lying, so fair enough. Did his source tell him that? Maybe. Again, not going to say that Max is lying. Gray Zone does really good work. But let's be honest. He is as susceptible to the anonymous source said X, every bit as much as Politico, every bit as much as every other organization that gets and uses anonymous sources, these ubiquitous anonymous sources. My point is this. Israel is a colony that the U.S. supports for its role and capability in the Middle East. It is not the other way around. You can make an argument to me that the wants dovetail, yes, but you can't tell me that the U.S., who funds it, gives it all the money, all the weapons, all the political support. I mean, for God's sake, the U.S. went to the ICJ in order to argue that Israel has the right to starve 2 million human beings. That's what we did. We are backing and funding a genocide. We are watching them murder, starve, rape human beings. We're watching it every day on social media. We can see it with our own eyes. We can see it take place. We can see the glee in Israelis' hearts as they shoot at starving Palestinians who are barely standing up, these ghostly figures, because they've wasted away to such a degree. We can see the glee in their hearts as they murder women and children, and of course, dangerous babies. This is something that this government has done in mass. I don't care about the rando Israeli that says, oh, I have psychological problems for murdering babies. Maybe you should have psychological problems. And there's an easy fix to that, considering you have a weapon. I'm pointing out something very different. I'm saying that Donald Trump is in lockstep with Netanyahu on all of this stuff, this ethnic cleansing, this genocide. Donald Trump is complete lockstep. It's not Netanyahu is leading Trump. It's not that. I don't believe that. My firm belief is that Israel is a colony, an actor that the United States controls, not the other way around. I don't believe the tail is wagging the dog. If the U.S. really stopped the money, stopped the support, stopped the political support, stopped supporting the UN, then Israel collapses. The day that the U.S. government collapses, within a week, the Israeli government and probably the Gulf states will also collapse right along with it. It is not a powerful nation. It is a nation of 8 million people, give or take, depending upon the number of people that left, that is completely reliant and dependent upon the United States for the very air that it breathes. The fart that comes out of Donald Trump's ass is the air that Israel breathes to exist. I hope you get my point. So this idea that Donald Trump is terrified, Donald Trump is scared to death. Donald Trump is enacting U.S. policy using Israel as his cudgel, as his tip of the spear in the Middle East to enact that policy, period. I don't think he's scared of anything. To say that he is scared makes it come across kind of like Joe Biden of, I'm doing everything possible. I'm trying to get them to stop. I'm doing this and I'm doing that. It is whispers from behind a cloak veil, behind a curtain, about what Donald Trump really thinks. Donald Trump really would do something different if Donald Trump wasn't terror. I don't buy that at all. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. I appreciate Max. Like Max. Gray Zone does great work. But you are on the Alex Jones show saying that. And Alex Jones, let's say, has a certain character about him. Gay frogs and all of this other stuff. Reptilians, lizard people, and the works and the likes. To give Max the benefit of the doubt, maybe somebody did tell him that. Maybe somebody did tell him that. Am I going to believe it just because some rando told Max that? No, especially if I can't interrogate the source. They told him. This is the same criteria. This is the same standard I have for any rando publication, whether it's Axios, New York Times, RT, Sputnik, Iranian media, Indian media, or any other media that is effectively living off of some kind of anonymous source in order to get something out. Will there be things that line up to reality? Yes. And on those things, I may give more credibility to. But on this, and perhaps my ideology is leading me astray, but from my ideological point of view, the United States controls Israel, not the other way around. And the policy that the United States or Israel is enacting is in lockstep with what the United States wants. Trump is not sitting in his room terrified that the Israelis are going to get him if he doesn't fall in line with what Netanyahu wants. This makes it look as if he's an actor that is forced into a particular position. I don't believe he's Charlie Kirk getting bodied in Hamptons and forced to take on a position that he may not necessarily entirely agree with. Trump is doing what other U.S. presidents did, just like Joe Biden did, just like Obama did, just like the presidents before him did, enacting policy for the U.S. government, diversification of responsibility. We're going to let Israel deal with the issues of the Middle East. We're going to make them a hegemon in the Middle East and be the other Muslim countries subordinate to Israel. If the Europeans can get their act together, we want the Europeans to be the one to absorb the missiles that Russia fire at Europe when Europe oversteps its line, which is trying to do with the whole Poland issue. And we will want to pivot to China, but we want our vassal idiots in Japan and Philippines to absorb the Chinese missiles that will inevitably come and blow them to hell. We would also get some of those missiles because China has a massive industrial capacity and can fire missiles at various sources. I hope you get my point. This is not Trump terrified, forced into policy. Trump is doing what he's paid to do and what U.S. policy on some level demands. He's backing his proxy and is trying to allow his proxy to take the blame for what is happening in the Middle East in order to create some level of fake distance between the United States and Israel. Max should know better. Max should know better. Let me go to chat real